teaching students to use AI is only half of the reform. Universities also have to determine when using AI can advance learning and when it can replace the mental effort the course is meant to develop. AI can execute a task without determining whether the question, the data, or the result is valid. And hence, reliability on it is questionable when students use it too much.
The problem arises when student uses AI to avoid intellectual thinking, submits the results as evidence of personal ability and cannot explain it. A student may declare using one tool but omit another, or may understate how extensively it was used. Yes, there are some tools definitely. Like usually, if it is written by one AI model, then it's easier to recognize. But if you write it multiple AI models, then it's difficult.
So the Higher Education Commission in Pakistan has introduced an AI policy for universities. And what they've also mandated is a 3-hour credit course specifically on AI, which is mandatory for all students of undergraduate programs. So what does that mean? Before we get into that, I'll tell you a bit about the draft policy. It prohibits students from presenting AI-generated work as their own, and it requires disclosure of the tools that students are using when preparing their work using AI. And both rules depend heavily on self-reporting. The policy acknowledges that AI detection reports cannot independently justify punishment, leaving universities without any reliable way to prove undisclosed use. So really, we're depending on students disclosing themselves that they've used AI, right? So we'll discuss a bit about what the practical alternatives to this could be, especially in terms of unsupervised work, like assignments that students may be doing at home. And then we'll move on in the second part to talk about the compulsory AI course that teaches more than prompting. So it's a course built around prompts and popular chatbot risks, but that could quickly be becoming outdated. So students are already learning basic use of the tools outside the university in everyday life. We know that most children are using either one or the other chatbot, AI powered. Um, so the scarcer capability is building with artificial intelligence, right? So using APIs, requesting structured outputs, automating workflows, and applying models across large data sets. So also, because the course is mandatory across disciplines, it's also important to remember that technical instruction must vary by discipline. The way a doctor will use AI will be very different from the way a lawyer will use it, or a business person would use it, or a manager or a software engineer, right? And the safeguards and standards of evidence will also be different. So at the same time, the foundational subject knowledge remains essential because AI can execute a task without determining whether the question, the data, or the result is valid. And hence, reliability on it is questionable when students use it too much. So there's also this claim that AI multiplies existing ability. But that raises a lot of questions because students with stronger schooling, with English proficiency, with better devices and paid tools will definitely gain far more from the same course than students who do not have those privileges. So to discuss this and more, we're very lucky to be joined by Dr. Shafiullah Qureshi, who is a professor of business analytics and has a vast experience of several years of building businesses and tools using artificial intelligence and related to artificial intelligence. So thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Shafi. We wanted to start with asking you that if universities cannot reliably determine how an assignment was produced at home, should take home work still carry substantial marks? As a teacher, how are you grappling with the use of AI by students?
First, thank you, Usama, for inviting me for this important discussion. Regarding your question, yes, the universities, we need to change the assessment. Universities should separate learning from grading. Take home can become low stake practice in which AI is maybe permitted for exploration and feedback. I'll just talk about more in a while. Important grade should come from supervised written work, presentation, practical demonstration, and oral defenses. So these methods allow students to demonstrate understanding directly. A student might use to obtain another explanation, generate practice question, receive feedback on a draft, or explore different approaches. These can support learning. The problem arises when student uses AI to avoid intellectual thinking, submits the results as evidence of personal ability, and cannot explain it. This issue is therefore AI supported learning or replace it.
Right. And in your experience, what have you seen in the classroom? How are students using AI, and what are the main issues that you've come across so far?
The main issue is coming through the homework, right? So you give like in the recent days we had some discussions with other colleagues, and so it's very easy for the students to go and just solve those assignments, the take home assignment. So and that is like the main challenge there, because we have to teach students how to use AI properly, like, because don't jump to the answers. So they have to have some process to understand so we want him to understand, so use AI to build their further understanding around the subject, not just to jump to the answers.
Right. So the process becomes very much important, rather than just the answer that they're providing. I also want to talk to you about this disclosure aspect of the new HEC policy, right? Where they're relying on self-disclosure or self-reporting from students when they're using AI. So does it serve as a useful educational purpose? Or does it then become a compliance exercise that honest students follow and others evade? So, as a teacher, how do you see this?
Disclosure can certainly encourage students to reflect honestly on how they use AI, but teachers cannot independently verify that the disclosure is complete. A student may declare using one tool but omit another, or may understate how extensively it was used. The final document does not reveal the complete history of it, how it was produced. Therefore, I would retain disclosure as educational and ethical practice, but I would not make it as a main basis for disciplinary enforcement.
Right. And what you're talking about then is just a problem of honesty, right? Because you're saying, okay, yeah, students can tell half truth in their disclosure, but then at the same time, it would remain. But are there ways of verifying whether AI has been used in an assignment, or what tool has been used? Are there any tools exist that professors such as yourself could use to determine whether AI has been employed in an assignment, for example?
Yes, there are some tools definitely. Like usually, if it is written by one AI model, then it's easier to recognize. But if you write it multiple AI models, then it's difficult. Recently, the I think Anthropic has added like a watermark on their if it is generated, so they will be able to recognize. The same goes with the Google Gemini, so they also have added the watermark, but they can recognize only on their own models, not the other models like OpenAI. So even they say themselves that if you rewrite that article or paraphrase it, then it would be difficult to diagnose that on. And also, like, we have the AI detectors can spot patterns that are like statistically associated with machine learning. That all it does, right? So it cannot tell whether a student understand the subject, why they choose one source over another, and how they arrive at calculation, and what feedback change their thinking. So or whether they can defend their conclusion or when somebody pushes back. So technically, we can to some extent with the AI detectors, but it would be hard to know exactly if we do multiple changes.
So the reliability problem exists in technical tools, but as a professor, can human checking perhaps, tell you that AI has been used, or does that become difficult also?
Um, to some extent, if you know the students, like their writing pattern, how they have been writing over the one semester, and suddenly they started writing very nicely, or they were very poor in understanding and something like that. So it means that there's a possibility and chance in that they are using AI then.
Right, but it's again the issue of reliability comes in, right? Where it's open to guesswork and interpretation rather than an empirical way of knowing.
Yes, to a greater extent.
So, in your opinion, what should an ideal university AI policy look like?
We should, as HEC already has introduced the course, like as you mentioned in the very start, right? It's beginning this compulsory course AI. So important is to teach the students like how to use AI, for example, not to replace their thinking, but to help them in learning, finding alternate explanations and sort of things there. So we have to teach students, how they're going to use the AI first, right? Because they need to build like transferable skills, the principles, like for example, they should be able to use like API, for example, or they should be able to use like ChatGPT work or Cloud Cowork kind of things. So they automate the process like that, I think. And so definitely it will help the students to improve their understanding about the subjects as well. But so we have to separate the learning from the grading.
Right. And just thinking more about the HEC policy, in your opinion, should HEC be defining broad principles while universities should be allowed to redesign their, AI policies independently? Or do you think that standardization on a national level is necessary?
I think HEC can provide the broad principles. I agree with that. And so university should define their own AI criteria as per their needs. So it can be very like maybe like you teaching something different, or maybe have a different for economics and business students, and maybe different for computer science students, kind of things there. To what extent they should be allowed to use there. But of course, like assessment is different than the learning. So in the learning, I would definitely support to use AI to whatever extent is possible.
Right, right. So we'll come to the second part now and maybe talk a bit more about the compulsory course that HEC has proposed at universities at an undergraduate level, right? So, because you have dappled in AI so much through your life and career, I thought I would ask you that what should every graduate understand about artificial intelligence, regardless of the discipline? By the end of the 3 credit course that they're taking on AI?
I think the only thing I would say here is it should not be a long semester course only on just writing prompts, right? We should not, I mean,
Mm,
there should be just like maybe, just maybe just one class or two class, because, the recent models are getting so much better that even they don't need the prompting, right? So that would be a slightly different topic. Like recently, the Anthropic the Cloud Code creator, Boris Cherny, and he mentioned that they have deleted 80% of the prompting from the Cloud Code, because the prompts, the large prompts used to like make amends for the weakness in the model. If there's a weakness in the model, so you can add the more prompts so that you can correct it. But these days, models are so much better that we don't need the prompting. And also for the prompting would be a different, because prompt is not just writing a very good English language. It's a knowledge that someone has got over the years. So of course, it should not be just on the prompting. We should teach them definitely ChatGPT or the Claude, and also the work. So their work is different. And also like a cloud co-work kind of things. And so they can automate the process there. In addition to that, we should also teach like API use. So APIs means that you take the model and you build your own code. But of course, they can use the AI assistance for coding, and we don't want to learn them all the coding because that would be a difficult for them. And we have the AI because this is what I meant. So they're going to use AI coding assistant models to generate the code, and they should be able to use the API. For example, start from the OpenAI library, Python library. So that means with ChatGPT, you can handle maybe, I think, 10 documents you can chat with some limitation. Either Claude is limit is less, but with the API, you can talk to hundreds of documents at the same time. Like you can build automation process, you can deploy it some clouds there. Maybe the cloud part is hard is there, but as far as like economics and business students are concerned, definitely we need to teach them to the API level so they can build the automated workflows, AI workflows, so they can automate the process there. It's not like it's a different than the software engineer point of view, the to like build like packages or products like that. But to have the understanding on the API would be really beneficial to automate anything in their work, in their study and their work.
So, for the benefit of our audience, could you please explain a bit what we mean by automated workflows?
Let's say, let me just give an example. Suppose we want to track some projects, let's say for Canada, national projects, and you have some data or you're collecting data every day, 500 newspaper data, and then you want to extract only specific information on the national project, like national defense project. How are you going to do that, right? So it means you build some models, and then you can automate the process. You can deploy it on Azure cloud, for example, where your codes are running every day, like 1 p.m., and it extract the relevant information about the amount of investment, the county or the province or the city and the company who invested in it, the company information, all the stuff there. And then everybody gets in some Word document the automated reports, the concerned people there. So this is the automation. Like if you do it manually, it will take maybe days or months, right? So with AI, you can just get 5 articles from 500 daily article, let's say.
Right. And no, thank you for explaining that, right? Because that means that a lot of the functions that are labor and time intensive get taken care of by AI, and then people can focus on other things on the job, right? And of course, you require oversight of these processes as well, because complete reliability on AI without human oversight can then also be tricky, because as we know, AI could be making mistakes, could be missing information. Is that something that is addressed in the classroom, or do you think should be part of this course?
Yes, you raise a very important, valid questions. Definitely, we should be checking even the chat GPT, and they have written all on their chatbots that because these models can produce false information, so have to verify this. It's very important to teach those things. They have to verify, and sometimes like this comes to me in other points coming from the interview by Boris Cherny, and he is the like Claude creator. He has a recent interview at YC Combinator, where he mentioned one of the thing is the important skill is the verification, because these models can produce so much good these days, like Fable 5, Opus 5, GPT 5.6 Sol. So they have a lot of capabilities. No, the important source recent days is the verification. So how to verify those information.
Right. So fact checking and also, verifying, because we've seen many instances of hallucination within these models where, sometimes they will make up some facts, because, it feels like these models are trained and programmed to please the user. So it's almost like, oh, yes, sir, I will answer you and I will find this. And even if they can't find it, it feels like the model feels this pressure to say something or the other, right? And I think then that becomes problematic.
I think in recent years, models have improved much more. Like if I go back and look at the 2 years ago, the model was doing a lot of hallucination. Like I remember one of the projects we were doing in Canada was the Hansard Canadian Parliament documents. So the Canadian Parliament sessions, you have a long documents like 80-page session. There are a lot of sessions there, and it's the 80-page, sorry, 80 lines. It's a PDF document. It is very convoluted and complicated like information. So we saw that there was like picking up some of the wrong information, but there are some ways to handle those things there. Like we use is a terminology called agentic RAG, and that results improve definitely. And to answer your question, like the model gave us the answer like a pleasing kind of things. It's not 100% true these days because the models have more agentic behavior now. Even if you ask, like, give me a response so bluntly or clearly or something like this, all these though, so model can give you a better response, definitely.
So what you're saying is that the quality of the prompt is also very important in getting the desired result.
Because the prompts are still there in the model, right? Like I said earlier, the model has improved. We don't need to do a lot of prompts, but still we want to control the behavior of the model. So to control the
Mm,
behavior of the
mm.
model, that's why still they gave the options. Like maybe after a few years when AI is so big, so advanced, maybe we don't need prompts, maybe that would be a true AGI then.
Right, right. Um, I want to talk a bit about computing infrastructure. We have this HEC policy. They're asking, for this compulsory AI course in every university. Um, but how do you feel about, limited computing infrastructure in many universities? So how would they be able to teach API automation, data workflows, when computing infrastructure may be limited or not of the best quality? And this includes internet connections.
Yes, definitely. This is very important questions, and yes, AI has come cost. API has some cost, definitely. Even if you don't use API at all, we are still, if you're teaching to the students with ChatGPT or Codex or Anthropic, so there's a monthly subscription cost per person, like so $20 for the OpenAI. And I understand across the class of 80, and this becomes a serious kind of money, maybe in rupees. API also has some cost, definitely, but it has a different kind of cost. And for teaching, it is much smaller. A subscription, for example, charges every seat, like every month, every person, whether student uses it or not. API cost is only when you are actually using it. And we do not need to use most expensive models. Anthropic, for example, has called Claude Haiku. OpenAI has Luna and Nano Tiers model. And these are like perfectly good for learning what an API is, how to ask for a structure output, how to ask for how to run a task across a large file. So these are a much cheaper model. Like Claude Haiku is 4.5, the model is just like a $1 input cost and $5 output cost is the cheapest model. And we also have like ChatGPT 5 nano model, ChatGPT 5 mini model, and then the recent version is ChatGPT 5 Luna model, which is quite cheaper, like has cost of 20 cents for the input and output is 1.2. So it means that and regarding there are other sources as well, like open source as well. But the problem with open source, maybe we need to have some computing, like at least we need to have a laptop with 16 GB RAM to 36 to be able to run a smaller model. So there's also other options are there to run a smaller model with a small GPUs and that. How to handle this question, like how to provide these, probably universities, maybe some of the universities can allocate some of the small budget for the course, or maybe they can upgrade their labs. to be able to run some of the open source models. Like for the open source, there are a lot of like good framework, like Langchain, for example. They can use that one. Langchain graph for multi-agent framework. So these are the open source frameworks there. There are other ways they can also use the open source models with the API.
No, thank you. That addresses some of the concerns. The next question I have is also, clearly the artificial intelligence essentially is amplifying the existing ability of a student or any user. Um, so when we have compulsory AI education, do you think that could widen the gap between well-prepared and poorly prepared students? And by well-prepared, we mean students with more access and resources than students who don't have it? Or do you think it could be a way of bridging gap between students?
Actually, there are maybe we can look at it in different ways. Like, let's say if you want to look at the computer science student, someone who's used to very good in coding and programming and running any some student who doesn't know anything. So AI also helping to minimize that gap between the more expert person and then, like, for example, let's take the example of the coding as well. But when I say AI like improves or multiply your existing knowledge, it means that someone let me just give an example like Kaggle. So Kaggle is a platform owned by the Googles where different companies host the data science competition as well as AI competition is there, right? So we are hundreds and thousands people's across the world and from different domain. They come and try to compete on the same problem, so they have the access to the same problem, same tools there. But why their leaderboard score is not equal? So they have a different score, right? Like if you have look at the 500 people first, maybe just 10 people have maybe small differences there, but they are not. The reason has because somebody has to decide, let's say example of forecasting, which model to use forecasting, which feature to select those forecasting tools, and kind of things there. So obviously AI gonna help someone who already has some knowledge and or has has can help it to further improve that knowledge.
No, absolutely. I also wanted to ask you about, we are adding an entire credit course that's mandatory at universities. Do you think there are other existing course content that could be removed from courses rather than simply adding, another requirement to a degree? Like, how do the credit hours work? Will you see that, the overall composition of degrees will change because of the introduction of this course?
I think the better answer can provide by the academics themselves. Some of the like is maybe related to like a different universities and different schools there, but I think it's not going to disturb a lot of like syllabus there. So there's a lot of margins because you have like 4-year degree and then you have every semesters you have a lot of courses there. So definitely it can be adjusted. It's someplace is there. And I think it's not going to disrupt, but rather it will help and beneficial for the students because usually, uh, academics we usually change the syllabus because we don't want to keep the syllabus same.
Regularly. Hmm.
Yeah, according to the needs of the industry, maybe some, let's say, a few years back, data science emerges, so a lot of like interdisciplinary fields emerging worldwide, including Pakistan, and like machine learning course and these things. So now there's AI, so obviously that world has changed quickly, and so we are trying to do as well.
Dr. Shafi, I want to go back to you mentioning, different models, including open source ones, that people can use. And we're seeing in Pakistan, of course, like anywhere else in the world, a lot of consumption of these models, right? Use of it. But are there any models being developed locally as well? And I especially am thinking about using local languages. So, for example, if someone's English is not strong, but Urdu is their strength, are there options available for such students?
I think I'm not very aware if you have any models that is trained recently. From a friend who's doing a PhD in AI, and he was just telling me just a day, just yesterday, that they are thinking to train a model on Urdu language and in Canada. So probably like maybe, but of course, they are these models, existing models, can understand Urdu as well. So it's like OpenAI models, definitely they can understand. Even if someone doesn't know English, they can talk to in Urdu as well. Like when I teach my fourth grade, my daughter, she is in fourth grade, and I'm trying to like teach her with the help of the AI, like science, and so she can talk to the AI in Urdu, for example, as well.
And do you feel that the results are similar quality to the ones in English when you speak to it in Urdu?
If you cannot understand English very well, so it means if you the idea is to understand the concept, right? If you can understand better in Urdu, that's much better. The end goal is not just the English, right? If until unless the communication is the goal is to understanding the subject, and any language the person is comfortable should go into that.
So you're saying that, ChatGPT, for example, will give as good a response in Urdu as it does in English. So it's essentially translating.
Uh, So these models can understand, because there are some models who are multilingual. So these models can understand different languages, and so you can combine it, because usually how it works is that you have a language model, then you have the speech models. So you can combine these together, and they can work in the same API kind of things.
Right.
Like
So what the model is doing is it's for example, looking up the answer in English, but then it's translating it to Urdu itself and giving it to you.
uh, it's not like translating. It means that it can understand directly. It directly
So it
understands
can,
that language yeah.
and so if you're speaking to it Urdu, it's directly understanding that in Urdu. And even if that database or information that it's extracting is in English.
Yes, maybe because these models have been trained on different languages. Like this way, like Google has a model that are they are multimodal. That means that they can understand audio, images, videos, as well as like text there. So they are multimodals kind of things there. So multi-language models are also there.
Right. No, that's interesting because, it's also, I think we spoke about how this curriculum or this course should not only be teaching prompting, but teaching, different uses of AI. And one would hope that this would also lead to innovation, where perhaps, models can be developed that are local as well, locally produced. And we've also, heard that data centers have been set up in Pakistan in different places by the government. Do you feel that that could lead to more like local innovation and development of models?
Definitely. I think we need to train our students, particularly who are studying AI, directly AI or data science, to able to build these models. So you can start with them, the smaller language model, and then from there, if you have a bigger compute, you can go for the bigger models. I think we don't have yet anything, but I think we should do that.
Right. And hopefully, what we're seeing is the introduction of this course will lead people, including professors and students and researchers, as well as the technology industry, to perhaps think more on how, innovation can be done and how local models can be set up. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Shafi, and for sharing your perspective on HEC's policy, but also like what is happening related to AI in the classrooms. And then, also your perspective on the mandatory course that is being introduced. What we're seeing is that teaching students to use AI is only half of the reform. Universities also have to determine when using AI can advance learning and when it can replace the mental effort the course is meant to develop. And hopefully, this can lead to more innovation. This can lead to using AI to become more efficient in workflows or in other tasks that we're doing, rather than simply using it to do the thinking on our behalf. It should really be used to accentuate our thinking. So that's it from us today. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll be back with another episode next week of Digi Pod on DawnNews English. I'm your host, Usama Khilji, signing out.